Okay, we're going to be drawing the rhino, and he's one of the large pachyderms. We are covering rhinos and hippos and elephants. So we'll start with the rhinoceros, and let me get a close-up here. I'm looking right now just to see how much space I have in the camera. So let's back out. There we go. Okay, I'll adjust this as we go. We're going to draw the rhino, and there's not really a line of action with this guy. It's not like he's a highly animated figure, but what I'm going to do now is just sort of start an armature. And the first thing, what happens when we look at things naturally, our eye just first of all grasps the larger shapes before we go into smaller shapes. And it happens so quickly that you can often skip this. You can rush right into doing the head or the leg or the ear or some minor detail, but what really happens in your mind's eye excuse me, is that you will see things first as a dark mass or a light mass, and the first thing your eye does is try to separate the detail of light and dark and shape. And it's really very quick before your eye then moves on to more shape and more detail. So the first thing your eye does right off the bat is try to get the basic shape in. And so we're slowing this process down as an artist. We're actually getting in tune with the automatic part of our brain that does this without us even thinking about it. So right now I'm not worried about detail and skin texture and all those ideas. I'm really just laying in an armature, some of the basic shapes that we will see with our mind's eye right off the bat before we go into more details. So I'm doing this rhinoceros, and I'm laying him out in perspective where, you know, as I line him up, taking the lineup of his feet into the background should give me an idea of how those feet would line up with the front feet, the hind feet and the front feet. So right now I've done my armature, and at this point I should be able to tell from my either conceptual or from the real live animal if I'm in proportion or not. And so you wouldn't take it much further than this until you're sure about your proportions, because at this phase you're able to correct and fix things that might be problematic. So right now I'm now going to go into form. I've got my armature, and I'm now going to start looking at the way things fit together on this guy. So I'm going into the major forms, and I'm going to start defining him a little bit. Now if you notice, I drew from tail to head, and that's fine. It's whatever you capture in the animal, whatever seems to be speaking to you so quickly when you're capturing that gesture. It doesn't matter to me whether I start on the hind end or the front end. So eventually you'll get to that point where you stop being transfixed over the head or the front of the body, and you begin to just sort of draw what you see very quickly. Now the rhino, as I'm going through, I'm drawing the underbelly, and I am finding that area where the neck here sort of is girdled in or holstered into the shoulder area. So actually then I can come up with my plane change right about here. Okay. And the rhino has a lot of folds in the skin, and so we want to think about those forms now. The rhino skin is very heavy, and it appears to be very thick, but it's also highly sensitive. Okay, so now I'm starting to feel that form, feel the way the foreleg is drawing out from beneath there. And we have the scapula here. We have strong high dorsal vertebrae, and This is because the neck weight, anytime an animal has a huge amount of neck or weight on the front end, you know that the dorsal vertebrae right here between the shoulder blades is going to be very big. Because it has to support, all those muscle structures have to support that heaviness of the head. So now I'm coming in here for the wrist, which are the carpals. And then the metacarpals. And if you notice, I'm drawing through the pad of that foot. I'm drawing through the whole form. We're trying to simulate that reality of life, of things being very dimensional. Okay, the 3D idea of that they're not just stuck on a flat piece of paper, but they're drawn in the round. And this is extremely important, especially if you're going into animation or illustration, because as an animator, you have to know how to draw things in the round, because by the time the animation is finished, there's nothing but an outline with paint on the in the form. So everything else has to be really, really filled out well, because the drawing itself in animation will end up being flat again. So the idea is to bring as much life back into it before you pump some of the life back out of it. So I'm just using ball shapes for the carpal joints, but actually you could, you know, if it came off as feeling very squarish to you, you could do that too. It's really a matter of how the artist is visualizing the form that it sees in there. Okay, so now I'm coming out for the pad of the other foot here. Okay. And I come back here to the rump and feeling a thickness of that fold as it wraps around the thigh and the upper buttock area. And I haven't even started the head yet. I'm just coming back here to sort of work through some of the folds in the skin. I'm using the Carbothello Black. It is a charcoal type pencil or a pigment pencil. And now this thigh is very interesting. The patella is probably right about here, because we have the pelvis going back to the ischium. Remember, this is foreshortened. And then the femur comes forward, and then we have the patella here. So the pelvis is up here, and the patella is here, because the femur comes forward towards us. And there's so much mass on the leg, you're probably not going to see that knee coming out, but it's there, and you may also be able to detect it with a plane change in the lighting. But it's not going to be very strongly visible to the eye, because it's covered by so much skin. So now I'm just coming through with his form, and we have the calcaneus hidden behind there, and those are the tarsus and the metatarsus on the hind leg. Drawing through that form. And I'm going to the opposite side now. Now see, as the drawing grows, as I develop it, it starts to thicken up and get more mass, and so the legs may shift a little according to the dimension and size of the body. And there's a sense of weightiness to those feet. Try not to make them like logs, because I see students try to so abbreviate these forms they come out looking like thick logs, and they've got a lot of spongy padding on their feet, you know. You kind of have to feel the weightiness of that leg, the volume and weight. Okay, so now I'm going to come up here and I'm going to sort of work out that skin a little more and wrap it around that form. Come up forward at just below the break of the knee there. And see, by overlapping those lines, you create this fold, sense of reality of dimension, that's actually wrapping around to the hind side. Okay. Coming through the pelvis and the spine. I feel a little overlap of that front end in front of the hind end. Okay. And I can feel that other shoulder wrapping around this guy. There. And now I'm coming out with the neck and the thickness and the weightiness of that large head. And feel how that comes forward. And the collar, the skin collar, is thick, layered. Okay. This is also a good lesson for learning how to use the pencil to build up some of the shapes. See, now they're coming out off the page. They don't feel flat. And this is the advantage of learning how to do draftsmanship and drawing form. I'm going into my subforms, of course. You get the idea that the thing is, you know, coming up in dimension off the page. We're starting to feel what is coming forward, what is dropping back, what is on the side. So I'm wrapping that collar, skin collar, heaviness around the neck. It's like a wattle, just hangs there. Okay, coming down to the front of the head now. I'm dropping in the ear. And I'll put one forward and one back, like that. So the ear has this kind of little tulip shape to it. There's the plane change off of that forehead. And right now it might look a little stiff, but we're finding the form and then we're going to soften that form and coming down the slope of the forehead now. Rhinos have a very thick, wide brow. Their eyes are relatively low on the skull. They're not, people think of them as being up here. They're not. They're very low, midway between the end of the nose and just behind the ear of the skull. Midway down is about the placement of the eye. So we're looking at something right about here. Okay? And they're low on the brow, coming off of the temporalis. They're very low here, placed on the head. Okay? The muzzle has so much skin overlap at the nose itself that sometimes the nostrils don't look very flared. They're just heavy, heavy skin over the top of them.